Hello everybody and welcome to the Gaming Grappler. If you couldn't tell by the name of my channel, this is a channel dedicated to talking about mixed martial arts, but not only mixed martial arts. Yeah, we talk about gaming and I even do movie reviews, so I do a little bit of everything over here. And for today's review, I'm going to be talking about UFC 270, Francis Le Predator Ngannou versus Ciro Gane Bongame. I think that's how you pronounce it. My French, pardon my French, I'm not that good at French, but a lot of mixed opinions about this card. Some fights were awesome, other fights under-delivered. I think the main event in particular is one of those fights where it wasn't particularly entertaining, but it was surprising, if that can make any sense to you. So we're going to get into this fight card. We're going to start with the prelims, and you're going to have to forgive me. I missed the first fight on the prelims. I know I'm unprofessional, but with that being said, we're going to start with Tony Gravely versus Simon Olivier. And Simon Olivier was coming to this fight as a striker. The guy was in phenomenal shape for this fight, but Tony Grappler was the grappler, and grappling is king in MMA. You know, the channel isn't called the Gaming Grappler for no reason. If you're a grappler and the other guy doesn't know how to grappler, you're pretty much guaranteed to win the fight. I don't want to say that because a lot of grapplers have eaten some pretty nasty knees in MMA, but for this fight, pretty much what happened is Tony Gravely got Simon Olivier on the floor. He laid and he prayed, and he got the fight done. Tony Gravely wasn't too aggressive with his wrestling, and by that I mean all he did was get Simon Olivier on the floor, maintain top position, and that's pretty much it. He wasn't too offensive in submission attempts. He didn't do much ground and pound. I think he did the bare minimum necessary in order for the ref not to stand them up. As for Simon Olivier, to give him a little credit, the guy had fantastic cardio for the entirety of the fight. The guy was hardly breathing, even though, when I say he was hardly breathing, he wasn't huffing and puffing. He was just completely normal while Gravely was on top of him trying to do ground and pound. And Olivier, the guy, did attempt a lot of guillotines. A lot of those guillotines looked like they were close and that they could have gotten them, but I'm going to tell you guys, they tell you this in jiu-jitsu all the time. No, most of the time, letting go of the guillotine is the best option. A lot of guys, the very first thing you do when you shoot a double leg takedown in wrestling or in jiu-jitsu is protect your neck, because you know the first reaction that the other guy is going to do is immediately guillotine on reaction. You almost know. It's almost like a sixth sense that this guy's going to come for my neck. This guy's going to come for my neck. I better defend myself immediately. Even if you spear the takedown perfectly, you're going to protect your neck. That is just a wrestler's instinct. That is always your instinct, is to protect your neck. So Simon Olivier's main wrestling defense was just guillotines, and it didn't work for that reason. Gravely was ready for it, and he was able to escape of it. Pretty boring fight. Might have been by necessity for Gravely. You don't want to stand with a pretty talented striker with Simon Olivier. He did what he had to do, but as a fan, not too interesting of a fight. Honest opinion. And our next fight was Della Madalina versus Pete Rodriguez. And I'm going to tell you right now, Jack pretty much destroyed Rodriguez from start to finish. Rodriguez wasn't able to get anything going. Jack had a really solid jab. He kept hitting Pete right on the button. The guy's nose was maybe broken and bleeding for the duration of the fight. And Jack got it done pretty quickly. The time for this fight is 2 minutes, basically 3 minutes. And it seemed shorter than that. Jack just completely stomped the guy. He steamrolled him, knocked him the fuck out, and got done. There isn't much I can say other than Jack looked really good for that fight. And then our next fight. This fight was one of the best fights on the card. It was mostly a striking match between Raoni Barcelos versus Victor La Mangosta Henry. And in this fight, both of these guys are fantastic and phenomenal strikers. And when I want to say that Victor Henry destroyed Barcelos, I don't mean that in a negative way. I think that Henry was maybe 15% or 20% incrementally better than Barcelos, but that was enough to essentially dominate the fight. And again, Barcelos wasn't getting destroyed by any stretch of the imagination. Henry was just a little bit ahead of the guy throughout the duration of the fight, and that was enough for him to win the fight. This was a technical fight. Both guys were throwing a lot of volume for the entirety of the fight. There were a lot of punches and kicks. And again, it was one of the best fights of the night. Striking isn't my strong suit. I don't really know what much criticize here. But again, Henry was just maybe 15-25% ahead, and he put up a good fight. And now we're on to the main card, and the fight is Michael Morales versus Trevor Gills. And Morales essentially just completely destroyed the guy. Again, this is another fight that apparently took 4 minutes, but it went by a lot faster when I actually saw it. I think Trevor Gills, his best fight, he fought best at the very start of the match. But for the most part, Morales just destroyed him. He was better in the striking, and he knocked him the fuck out. And that's all there was to it. Again, this is a quick fight, quick knockout. But one thing I do want to mention is that in the post-fight interview, when he was getting interviewed and he was answering in Spanish, the entire arena was popping off. You see a lot of Mexican fans. Latin America was basically well represented in its entirety in that arena at that time. They all came there to see Brandon Moreno, and they were also excited to hear from Michael Morales. I don't know where Michael Morales is from. I want to say El Salvador, but I'm not certain. Do not quote me on that. But it was hilarious just to see the audience popping off. You did not even need a translator there. That is just the type of energy that was in the arena at that time. And we're going to get to our next fight. Cody Stamann versus Said Nurmagomedov. And I just want to make a quick correction here. In my predictions video, I called him Said Nurmagomedov. I feel like a fucking idiot for saying that. His name is Said. And I also want to correct myself in that this guy has no relation to Khabib Nurmagomedov. He's from Dagestan, and that's it. And this guy is primarily a striker. But I get this. I predicted Said to win by grappling. Again, stupid knee, stupid decision, considering that Cody Stamann is the grappler. But get this, despite the fact that Said is primarily a striker, he still submitted the guy. What happened was Cody Stamann went for a single leg takedown, and when he went for that takedown, Said Nurmagomedov, he got a really deep guillotine choke on him. And I don't even want to call it a guillotine choke, because it was more like he had the rear naked choke grip, in that he had his forearm under the guy's neck and behind the guy's neck at the same time. So he had two arms like that in that position, kind of resembling a rear naked choke. And again, he got the fight really quick. I don't even think he sweated 47 seconds. Again, he just completely dominated. As you would expect, again, these Dagestan guys are extremely talented. It's pretty clear that Dagestan is just one of those talent hotspots on the planet right now. And if you're from Dagestan, you're going to see somebody just completely dominate and win. Surprisingly, this guy isn't even primarily a grappler, so that is surprising. So my prediction was correct, but for all the wrong reasons. And our next fight is Pierre versus Andre Fialio. I think I pronounced his name right, but in this fight, I didn't know what to say in my predictions video, because Andre here didn't even have a picture on the UFC website. UFC completely denied him a picture. I didn't know anything about the guy, but Andre is essentially just a boxer, and that's it. Pierre, again, in the beginning of the fight, within the first, again, two and a half minutes, Andre was dominating, but only because at that time, Pierre was also a boxer. And once he started getting his flow on and he started adding kicks to the equation and even a little bit of grappling is when the fight really got interesting. And then Pierre decided to get a little creative. He was throwing rolling thunders throughout the fight. He was jumping off the cage and really being a good showman and dominating the entire duration of the fight. I just want to say, Andre's skill set for this fight was severely lacking. You do not go into an MMA fight with only boxing. I mean, this is the first time in forever where I've seen a guy just only use his hands in a boxing way for the entirety of the fight. It's like the guy who joined up for the wrong sport at the last second. That's what it looked like to me. And he got picked apart and destroyed. And that's what happened. This is a good turn of pace for Pierre. Pierre has lost a lot of fights or just for showing off. This happened a lot. He once lost a fight for throwing an illegal knee, a fight that he was dominating. He lost to Tristan Connolly. That fight was interesting, where Pierre was doing his usual gimmick where he was jumping off the cage, was doing backflips, and then he gassed himself out and then got dominated by a guy like 2 weight classes lower than him. That happened, but it's nice to see him get a W for once. And I think he's starting to learn that, look, if you can do some fancy stuff, you should do it at a minimum. One of the good things about John Jones, one of the reasons why the guy has been champ for so long is that, you know, the guy can throw spinning elbows and spinning wheel kicks, but he does them very rarely. He knows when to use them. And when you can throw a spinning wheel kick or a spinning elbow out of nowhere, it can throw off another guy's rhythm. When he thinks he's having, I'm having a fundamental fight against a striker who's just going to jab and, you know, throw a cross or maybe a leg kick or two, and then bang, you throw a jumping knee out of nowhere, bang, you throw a spinning elbow out of nowhere, then those types of moves can benefit you immensely. But when you do them all the time, then being crazy is your normal, and the other guy can prepare for it and avoid it easily. But for this fight, he threw his crazy spinning shit very minimally, and he benefited for it. He only did it when he knew he was winning the fight, and then the other guy had no chance of winning. Again, Andre really should be learning more than just boxing. Again, I can't believe it. This is the first time in forever I've seen a guy just come in with boxing, and that's it. The next fight is Brandon Moreno versus Davison Figuerado, and this fight kind of resembled their first fight. And I just want to say my prediction was wrong. I predicted Brandon Moreno to win because the last time they fought, Moreno won in a dominant fashion in that I think he submitted him in the second round and very quickly. But for the third time around, and this is another thing that I mentioned in my predictions video, is that one of the reasons why Figuerado underperformed his last fight was the weight cut. The guy has to cut 60 pounds per fight, and that is ridiculous. Imagine cutting 60 pounds before a fight. That's like losing a fucking limb before you fight. And apparently Davison Figuerado went to go train with Henry Cejudo, and one of the things that he prioritized was getting his weight under control and figuring out a nice good way to cut weight cleanly and effectively, so that way when it came down to fight night, he wouldn't be drained and he'd actually be able to perform his 100%. And he performed at his 100% for this fight, and the fight was very even. It's one of those things that I pity the people that had to judge the fight. It was very close. It resembled their first fight in a lot of ways. But I think the reason why they gave Davison the fight, and again, this is one of the reasons why I'm not too angry about the decision, because a lot of people thought Moreno won, but again, this is a close fight. One of the things that Figueiredo did is that he got a lot of calf kicks in the first 2 rounds that paid off dividends, and every now and then he would land off a power shot. I think he dropped Moreno once or twice. Now, Moreno recovered very quickly and got some volume off and hit Figueiredo a lot, but I don't think it was, I think just incrementally, maybe by 5%, Davison Figueiredo was ahead. But now that I look at it on the site right now, Moreno was ahead in terms of striking, but was behind in maybe like 1 takedowns. Again, it was a very close fight. Again, how do you rank that? Do you rank the guy that got off more volume, or the guy that got off maybe 1 or 2 power shots and 2 takedowns? Again, very tough fight to judge, but I do want to say I think it was the best or the second best fight of the night. I think that fight with La Mangosta, Victor there, might have been better, I think, but this fight was pretty good. I think it might have been fight of the night. What can I say? Brandon Moreno and Davison Figueiredo are going to be fighting each other till the end of time at this point. They're calling for a 4th fight. These guys are just so evenly matched. It's hilarious. I think that somebody else should fight Figueiredo before Moreno. I can only see the same fight so many times. At some point, we just have to throw our hands up in the air and just say the guys are evenly matched. That's it. What the fuck are you going to do about it? Like, what if they fight a 4th time and then Moreno wins, or they come to a draw again? Like, these guys, like, what are we going to do here? So I think somebody new should fight Figueiredo, and then after that, Moreno should fight for the title again. I think that's the best way we can have the best of both worlds. Again, the only reason why I'm not too interested in seeing this fight happen a 4th time again is how many times can I see the same matchup over and over again? But now we're getting into the main event. And this was, here's my hot take and my complicated take. This was a fight that was boring yet surprising. It was surprising how it went. I predicted Francis Ngannou to win, but not in the fashion that he won. So in the first 2 rounds, Gane was picking Francis apart in the striking, and he was doing it badly. The guy was just, he was treating this guy like a punching bag. He was doing kickboxing combinations. He was kicking his legs. He was popping in. He was popping out. And Francis Ngannou wasn't able to get off of much of anything. And immediately after the first round, Francis Ngannou was looking tired. It reminds me of when Stipe was talking about his fight the second time he had with Francis in a post-fight interview, where, not in a post-fight interview, but he was talking on some show, maybe with Earl Wanted, but he was mentioning the fact that he noticed that Francis Ngannou was extremely tired after the first round, and that he thought that as the fight went on, his chances would increase. And as we saw with Francis Ngannou versus Gane, Francis was really, really tired after the second round, which made what happened in the third round incredibly surprising. Francis Ngannou in the third round decided to go, fuck it, I'm a wrestler now. And he shot a double leg takedown, one of the cleanest double legs I have ever seen. And he manhandled Gane and got him on the floor. Now, I just want to say this now. Every takedown Francis shot on Gane worked. And what's surprising about this is Francis is not known as a grappler. And I know that that's one of the things that he has been training the most. Of course, he has Kamaru Usman in his camp, and his head coach at his gym, I don't know the guy's name, the big ginger guy who talks to him in the corner. That guy was mentioning that he was chewing out Brendan Schraub at one point for ripping on Francis's wrestling. And he attests to the fact that Francis trains wrestling all the time. He's a good, and apparently he really is a half decent wrestler, because he got all 4 of his takedowns and was able to maintain top position throughout all of those takedowns. Highly impressive. Now, I do want to say this, that one of the reasons why that I think it was surprising but boring is he didn't do much with those takedowns. And it was very clear that he was tired the entire time. He didn't get off much ground and pound. And again, he was doing basically the textbook definition of laying and praying. But he got it done, and it's surprising to see him do that. Francis is a wrestler now. Now, you could argue that Gane maybe was one of the most hand-picked opponents for that strategy to work on, but it worked for a reason. Gane looked like he saw like a ghost, like he was completely shocked that Francis Ngannou would fight him in this fashion, and that made all the difference throughout this fight. Within the last round, Gane made a big tactical error. Gane got a takedown of his own. And when he got his takedown, he immediately abandoned top position and he went for a heel hook. Francis, showing his skill set in wrestling and jiu-jitsu, actually managed to get out of the heel hook. He did the proper technique. He pushed his foot forward and out of the heel hook, and he got out of that, and then he got in the top position and dominated the fight. I want to say this up front. Francis's skills in grappling is highly shocking, considering that he's the type of guy that you expected to win a fight just off of knockout and knockout alone. He's known as being the big, powerful guy who he doesn't have the best gas tank in the world, but he will go through you like a train. But it was really surprising to see that despite the fact the guy was exhausted, and tired and huffing and puffing, that he could pull wrestling out of his back pocket and he could carry him over the victory. The guy tried a judo takedown at one point. He got under the guy's shoulder and tried to trip Gane at one point. Really surprising to see his wrestling at that level. But again, you could argue that Gane is maybe the one opponent where you would expect that to work. So Gane's big mistake is that what he should have done, which serial, as Derek Lewis usually calls him, what he should have done is in the 5th round, when he got that takedown, is he should have just maintained top position, hit some ground and pound, and he would have won the fight. Again, pretty boring fight. Not much happened. Really not much happened. It was just surprising that Francis won by wrestling. It's surprising that the guy who had a reputation for having one-punch knockout power would win by wrestling. It seems to me that Francis learned a lot from his first loss against Stipe, and that he lost by the wrestling, and he decided to work on that a lot in his camp. You could see Kamaru Usman was just, you could just tell he's like, that's my boy. He's learned from me. And again, that's how the fight went. Dana White kind of snubbed Francis in the interview, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Maybe he was frustrated and that Francis wanted more money in his UFC contract, or maybe he was just disappointed that the main event for this heavyweight fight didn't really live up to the hype and was kind of a boring fight where not much happened. But that's a lot of heavyweight fights that don't end in a knockout, just end up being extremely boring, where the guys don't show too much technique and they just kind of like, you're just looking at two fat guys just sweat over each other for 5 rounds. But again, what is there to say? I will say this much. I gotta wonder what would happen if Stipe fought Francis again, because I think that Stipe, one of the reasons why he lost the second time was that he was severely underweight. Francis is a big guy. He comes in there weighing like 270, and Stipe came in there at 230. That is like over 30 pounds of a difference. You can't fight Francis. I don't give a fuck how good you are at fighting. That big of a weight difference will fuck you over in the long run. Stipe needed to have some weight in order to fight that guy at the time. And I would be highly interested in seeing the mythical 150 Stipe versus Francis. Again, he might get destroyed again, and I could be wrong, and this could be a shithead hot take, but I seriously think that, yeah, the guy has the skill set to beat him again, because, again, it seems to me that Francis is incredible. Francis's power in striking, if you're competent in that in your own right, you can avoid it, overpower it, and beat it. Again, if you can get out of the first and second round against Francis and you could deal with his wrestling, which, again, isn't the most high-level wrestling out there, you win. As for Jon Jones, I feel like Jon Jones is pretty much guaranteed to beat Francis Ngannou at this point. It's just guaranteed. It's just not even a thing for debate. Jon Jones has a high level of grappling and a high level of striking. Jon, I've never seen him fight at heavyweight, but I know he can strike better than Gane can. I know he can make it through rounds 1 and 2, and I know he can deal with Francis's level of wrestling. So I have to say that, yeah, I pretty much guarantee him to win. That's just my take. I know it's the same take as other people, but there's a reason why Jon was popping off after the fight ended. He knew he was going to win. So that being said, that's my thoughts on the card. Again, the main event left a lot to be desired, but it was surprising. It was surprising that Francis Ngannou won by wrestling. Francis Nurmagomedov is what they're going to be calling him from now on. And again, I will say it is shocking that his wrestling was at that high of a level, but again, the fight itself left a lot to be desired. Gane kind of just fought him for the outside for those first 2 rounds. And he didn't really get a chance to finish the guy or get a game going, because Francis got his game going. He laid and he prayed, and he won his fight. He did the bare minimum necessary to win against a dangerous opponent that was outstriking him and picking him apart. That being said, that was a fight. And that's the end pretty much of the video. I'm going to say, if you want to see more MMA content, I do plenty of MMA content. I review UFC cards. I give you my thoughts and predictions. I got a playlist dedicated to that. I also do video game reviews. I got a fantastic review for Metroid Other M that I made. It's one of my best videos. I highly recommend you go see it. I do movie reviews as well. I highly recommend you check out my review for Nobody and Doom. With that being said, this has been the Gaming Grappler, your daily source for MMA, video game, and movie reviews. I do it all. We do it all here at